I'm Shawn Digital Learning Coach for Union County.
I am Taylor Ricker. I'm one of the elementary digital learning coaches for Henderson County.
And I am Mechelle Gattis. I'm a digital learning coach for Marshall County Schools.
All right, we're back in Google Forms. We're going to do kind of a step up. So this is the next level up from what we just talked about. So things are a little bit more challenging, but nothing too hard. Even I think a first-time user could still probably jump in on a lot of these techniques. And I think we're going to start off with Miss Taylor going first on here.
All right, so my first one is going to a section based on an answer. So for the example that I did, my first question is just a yes or no answer. This one was, did you do your reading last night for homework? And based on if they answer yes, they go to a section. And if they answer no, they go to a section. So you'll see down the three dots in the right-hand corner, you click based on an answer, go to a section. And then while you're building this, you have to build different sections. Kind of a tip that I always use is I title the section whatever the answer was. So you notice my first question was yes or no, so I have a section that's titled yes. And then if they answer yes, I gave a question that I wanted them to answer. And then my next section, I'm going to title that no. That just kind of helps me when I'm building it to kind of know which section I'm wanting them to go to as I build it. So what this is, it just kind of takes out those extra questions that aren't needed if they answer a certain way. So once I have it built, I go back up to the top, that first question, and then that drop down, it says if they answer yes, I want them to go to the section and see it has the yes there. So that's what helps me. And if they answer no, they'll go to the no section. So then I also go to the preview so you are able to see that. There is an extremely important tip here as well. So the second section is yes. And so if you look right underneath it, it says after you answer this, continue to the next section. But you don't want them to do that because the next section would be no. So if this was a long form, you would want them to go to a different section or just submit the form, kind of like I had. So once I preview this, based on the answer, if they click yes, they will go to the next section and then just be able to answer that way and then submit. And then I go back and show you if they answer no as well. This is a tool that you can use in so many other different ways too. You can add some reteaching stuff or all kinds of things, but this is just one of those great ideas for forms that I use a lot.
So we kind of talked about this a little bit last week where we said choose your own adventure stories. So playing off of what I presented last time of like building a storybook on there, you could do the same idea with that. Choose what do you want your adventurer to do? Do you want to take the path on the left or you want to take the path on the right? And you write out two different stories. This is a great tool for doing something like that as well.
We've used this for things like in our help desk. If a student comes in, we have some kids needing a loaner Chromebook, and that's just, a day loaner. But then if a student comes in with a repair need, we just keep it all in the same form. But if you choose that they're getting a Chromebook loaner because of a repair, it takes you to the repair section. You can kind of detail what's wrong with their Chromebook. So, that's the way that we've used it here. And also, your tip is so correct to check that bottom one. And I always, because I've made the mistake before, and I always double check myself. I'll go through the form when I think I'm finished, especially if it's a complicated one, and just check every scenario that I think the kids could do just to make sure that I haven't forgotten to link it correctly.
Yes, and that's a good tip. Anytime you're using forms, before you send it, just make sure that you go through it and that you've done everything correctly.
So mine's going to have a little tie into it, but starting off, I'm looking at giving a response feedback. So the first one I'm going to look at is if you're giving a quiz. So this is a form. I've already got my questions made. It's already set to a quiz. I've already selected my correct answer. If you actually go down to the where you chose to select answer, you can actually do feedback responses. So if they gave a correct answer, you can say, hey, great job, terrific work, move on to the next question or whatever. But if they give it incorrect, you can actually start correcting them now. So you can actually say, okay, you got this wrong. Here's where you need to study this for. I love this with my math classroom because I would often say, hey, go back and try these specific problems again out of the textbook or worksheet. Or when I was doing the self-paced classroom, I would say, if you didn't score so well on a test, I want you to go back and we'll do these assignments. I'll let you retake the test. So this was telling them like what they could redo. And so that allows them to actually see that and interact with it. There is one trick though. You need to make sure you're setting it up for that immediate feedback. Otherwise, you're distancing the time that they're actually going to get that response back. And the longer we delay feedback, the less effective it is. And so you can see, student just goes in, they analyze their quiz, and it's going to say, okay, you got the question wrong. Here's what you're going to do, and it gives them that comment. So they get that quick feedback for it. And that'll do that for every question that they got right or wrong, and it'll explain and give them the pieces that they need. So the student is essentially building their own assignment. Now this one is a little bit different. This isn't going to be as a quiz. So this is more of a learning tool. So this is as the lesson's going on. This is just a normal Google form asking a question, but we're going to use that response validation, or the go-to based on responses, to do the same idea about giving a feedback. So if a student selected the correct answer, they move on to the next question or they submit their form. If they do it incorrect, well, we're going to build a feedback section for them, and it's going to have the components for them. So we'll go ahead and we'll add a title box that's saying like, all right, sorry, you got it wrong. And we can add a hyperlink to this. And it's really confusing on Google Forms because it doesn't ever look like it's hyperlinked. But if you paste in any URL in a Google form, it recognizes it as a URL and it goes ahead and builds a link for you. And then just what I did previously, I can do the same thing. I can go to YouTube, I can add in that video study guide. I can do a couple of additional practice problems if I want to do that. But the same principles there, it's just now it's going based on their section answer. And I think here in a second I preview that, but same thing, go through, select. On this one I'm jumping straight to submit form for the correct answer because I don't have anything else I want them to actually go to. But that's what I have for the feedback.
Yeah, I actually did a presentation on this before, and kind of as you're building this, it can, like you said, kind of get even confusing on what section you're going to. But a little tip that I always did, because after I had them watch the video, I had them go back to the question that they missed in the first place and get it right. And I had a lot of questions from teachers on like, well, how do I know if they got it right or wrong? So a trick that I kind of learned to do is when you have just like a YouTube video in there, you don't know if they watched that. But if you put a required question in there that says like, did you watch this video? And if they click yes on your end on that Google Sheet, if they have an answer in that column, that means that they got to that section.
Yeah.
So what kind of means that they missed it the first time. Again, this tool isn't really used to see if they get it right or wrong, but if you're kind of just checking to see, you know, who did have trouble and missed a lot of the questions the first time, that's just a little trick that I like to use.
I like to view this as a non-graded assignment. This is definitely a non-graded task. It's just there for that learning tool. You can even think about this as like, all right, I'm going to give this in addition right before a test where, all right, this will let you kind of go through and study. So the student's finding out, okay, I would have got this wrong if this was a test. Here's how I correct that.
That's a great tip. I love the attaching a video to it. They can get, that's instant feedback or reteaching or something like that. And even if it's, you know, one of you teaching the lesson, I love that when it's actually the teacher going, okay, you know, like if you're clicking on this, you need help with this question almost. So I love that. Just, you're almost there with them all the time, no matter where they are doing this work. I love that.
All right, Miss Mechelle, you are up.
So one that I chose today to share is response notifications. And I chose this one based on some experiences that I had teaching in the virtual world this past year. And so when you have a form, your responses, you can get them in two different ways. First is right there in the form, but you can also get them in a spreadsheet. And I almost always do that. I get my responses in Google Sheets. It's just kind of easier for me to see holistically everybody's responses and different things like that. And as you can see on here, if it's a quiz, you see their grade, and then you can scroll across and see all of the students' responses. And then if you go to tools on your menu and go to notification rules, you can select to be notified when a user submits a form or a change is made to the form. So, and you can get it emailed to you right away or daily. So how I use this is I don't set up the notification as soon as the form is due. I wait until kind of the bulk of the students respond to it. And then the way that I use this was if I had a student that didn't turn it in on the first day or the second day or the third day, I wanted an email as soon as they did turn it in. That way I didn't have to go back and keep checking the form to see if they had turned it in. So that's why I used it, so that it kind of notified me when a user submitted the form. And I just found that to be so handy, and it saved me so much time rather than like every day. That's how we checked attendance was, did a student do their work? And so I was, well, let's see, did Susie, do her form today? And that's how I counted her absent or not. So this just let me know when a student did. So I found it to be a great time saver.
Yeah, we did the same thing as far as attendance. So this is a game changer for those teachers. Instead of going into every assignment, it could be weeks after, to double check. So definitely helps with the time management there and getting those notifications.
We use this in the tech office frequently. So the moment we get a help ticket put in, because we utilize Google Forms for our help tickets, we get a notification and a form comes in. And I've seen where people have used this for their nurses and their counselors, where a student tried to stop by, but they couldn't stay. So they filled out a quick form back in the classroom or something saying, hey, I need to talk with you as soon as you can. Well, that person's getting an immediate thing. They can browse their email and be like, all right, I can call that student back down now. And so that was very handy, and less like a student waiting around, a student sitting in the hallway or sitting in the office waiting for these things. So very good ideas. Very versatile. All right, Miss Taylor, you are back up.
Okay, so my second one is audio questioning. I think a lot of this one, I think of a spelling test immediately, but it can be used for a ton of different ways. So instead of, for example, the spelling test, instead of typing the word, you say it and you record your voice. So this is using the extension Talk and Comment. So you first have to download that extension, and then once you do, you'll notice over in the right-hand corner or the right-hand side, there is a microphone there. So what you do is you just click on that button, and then you record your voice, and then you can put that recording into the question. So instead of typing it out, and what I like about Talk and Comment, well, I'll kind of pause. So you can play it, and then you click the link, and then you put it in there. And like Shawn said, it always looks like it's not hyperlinked, but it is. And there are a ton of different extensions that you can use that are similar to this. The reason I chose Talk and Comment is because it doesn't take, like when you click that link, it doesn't take you somewhere else. It's right there on the Google form. So you'll be able to see that here. So it looks like a link right now, but it's going to change. But all the student would have to do is just click that play button, hear whatever it is you're asking, whether it be a spelling test or for an ELL student or whatever it is, they can just hear it instead of read it and then be able to type their answer in. So this is the Talk and Comment extension.
Do you know if this only works with Google Forms?
Do I know if it only works with Google Forms?
Like, do you know if this is Google Docs, Sheets?
I am pretty sure it works with all the Google apps, but I do know for sure that it works with Google Classroom. When we did a training on it, we did an announcement in Google Classroom, and it did the same thing. It just put that box there, so you can just click play there.
See, I use Moat, I think is the one I do, but it does that, takes you to a different link option. Now, like I said, it's in the other apps, but it takes you out. So it takes you away from the Google form. So a student's going to have multiple tabs open if they're having multiple spelling words, if they're not constantly closing. So I like this one better. I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Oh, and especially, a lot of teachers kind of do the lockdown browser, or you can do that. And if you do something like that, they're not able to open up a different tab. So this one just kind of keeps it all right there.
I've never seen that add-on. I'm gonna use it for sure. I've learned something new. I knew I would. I was waiting to see what I would learn, and here I have learned something new.
Okay.
All right, this is dynamic fields, and this is another add-on. And so I really like this if you're having to have a lot of choices or choices that are frequently changing, but you're repurposing the same form over and over. This extension will work off of a Google Sheet that you have. So I really like this for when I have a list of my students' rosters and they're having to select their name. So instead of having to go through and type in each one or take the form and try to paste in each piece, I can actually go and set this up as a drop-down question and then go back to a Google Sheet that I have and tie it all together where it's going to recognize that piece. So here in a second, you're going to see an example of what the sheet looks like. So I've got an info sheet that has a list of students' names and their emails, and that's just an example I have. And then another sheet that has lunch choices for the day. And so I'm able to take all those students' names and quickly import them over into my form. I'm also able to take those choices and import those over as well. And I think you can do 3 questions, but I'll tell you from my personal experience running this extension, when you see this in a second, you can run it for the 3 and then update it and then run it for another 3. It's just a couple extra steps, but it's still a time saver. So right now it's going to let me go through and we're going to map out the connection to the question and draw it back to that Google form. And so that's all those permissions. That's really what it's doing. It's letting those 2 pieces communicate to each other. Letting it try to move on. So it'll let me first pick which question I'm going to do, and then I select the Google Sheet. And so when this comes up, it gives you a bunch of different options. I've never played with anything other than working off of a Google Sheet, but it is very nice if you just built this or just recently tied in, it's going to pull it up as a recently used, so it's going to find it a little faster. So once you have those connected, it'll then say, all right, from this Google Sheet, which tab do you want to grab from? And then from this tab, which column do you want to pull from? And so after that, it's just a really easy process. And one thing I don't like about it is once you hit save, it'd be nice if it said, okay, now what about your next question? But instead, it looks like you're about to edit what you're currently working on. So it gets a little confusing just on that bit. But other than that, it's going to pull all that same info back up. It's going to remember, all right, you just did this sheet. Now it's going to ask again, which tab do you want? Which column do you want? And then from there, I go back up to my extensions and I just launch it. So I'm going to say, all right, update the mapping. And you'll see right now, I've just got the student and the question, and then all of a sudden I've got all those imported directly in. I didn't have to do anything else. And so I scroll down, you'll see I have the choices. So what if that's something that changes frequently? Well, I can go in and I make adjustment to my spreadsheet. So I constantly will have teachers say, well, I've got these 5 new kids and these 3 kids left the district. Well, we can make those adjustments on this form real quick instead of having to go in and individually delete and then type in new ones. Once I make those changes there, I just say, once again, hit update, and it'll populate those new changes that it recognizes. So it will remove and it will edit for you on there and add in the new choices that we have. So this, for me, this was a big time saver on those big data pieces.
That's a new one for me too. I've learned 2 new things today. I can see so many uses for that, and what a time saver. Good tip.
Yeah, this is definitely new for me too. And I think about, in your sense, you had your students and then you changed, the lunch count, but this could even be pulled from the responses of a Google form. Like I think of like signing up for presenting at a PD thing, they fill out the form, and so then you have the responses of everybody, and then you pull it to a new form to kind of send out and do what they want for lunch or whatever that is. So, just connecting all those pieces, super cool and definitely a time saver.
All right, Miss Mechelle, you're up.
All right, so my second one for today is also an add-on. So I chose Choice Eliminator, and the way this is used is if you have a choice for someone to make, like what time they want to come to something, or what they want to bring to something, but you only have so many slots available. And again, this is kind of out of necessity because of COVID regulations. I've had several programs and things like that where only 20 people can come at a time, and so I've had to set up different times for people, and as soon as those 20 choose a certain time, then no one else can choose that time anymore. So I chose Choice Eliminator 2. It's an add-on, and it works best with a drop-down question. And so you just set your limit there at 20, and you can see that it will keep account of how many have chosen an option. And as soon as it reaches 20, that option is taken away. So then someone filling out the form doesn't even see that option available at all. They just see what's left. If you're eliminating after 1, you should use Choice Eliminator Lite instead of Choice Eliminator 2. It's just a lot cleaner, and it's really built just as soon as one person chooses to bring brownies or whatever, then that option is gone. Also, just a little bit of a tip, I guess, is there's a disclaimer. If there's about a 2.3 second processing time. So if 2 people submit the form at exactly the same time, and I've seen it just almost happen exactly like that, it doesn't have time to process that submission and get it correct in the count. So just on the rare occasion where that happens, you could see a slip up of like 1 or 2, but that's just hard to avoid when you have people accessing the form at the same time. But it's a great one to use, and I've used it a lot recently.
So our middle school has used this in the past where they were picking which room they were going to do for like a fun activity pre-COVID. And we let the entire school at the same time get on and start selecting. And it came down to that, as you said, like that instantaneous, both of you are voting, but it's got to be that closing vote for it to really air out. We never had an issue. So you're looking at 700 people voting at the exact same time, and it never popped up that. Now, if you have a much smaller count where you're like, all right, after 3, these choices are going away, you would see that. But if you've got a lot of choices, it runs really well.
Yeah, this is one that we use quite a bit too. We use them for parent-teacher conferences quite a bit. Back in the old days, you would send home a paper and check off the time that you want, and I'll try to get you in that time. So what we've done is we use the Choice Eliminator Lite, like you said, because we just want that one time. Put the times on there, the parents sign or choose a time that they want, and then for the next parent, that option isn't even there. So it takes a lot of hassle of parent-teacher conferences away for teachers.
I will say I always had a big fear that I'm running this stuff and it's just not going to work. And so you're sitting there watching in the background like, is it going to stop? Is it going to cut it off? Is it gonna...
I did the same thing. The first time I used it, I was literally like staring like, okay, someone else, because I'm almost to the count, and then it was gone, and it worked.
And see if it stops it.
Yeah. Yes, I did the same thing.
One thing, if a choice has been eliminated while someone has the form pulled up, I think it just they try to pick that, it kind of errors it and backs them back out and then cleans it back up.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. So if they had it pulled up in the morning and then didn't vote till later in the afternoon, those choices, it just kind of erred and made them start again.
Okay. I've only had it happen one time where we were doing bus driver signups to get their CPR recertifications, and so they had to pick, one, and I had 2, and I even checked the timestamp, and they were within milliseconds of responding. So I had 2 at my 8:30 spot when I really should only have had 1, and so that did happen to me one time, but it was easily fixed. But it's possible.
Well, that is it, guys. I thank you both for helping me out with doing these. I've enjoyed them, and I hope everybody tuning in, you've got something out of this. keep watching for more that we do. We will continue to grow. I mean, our DLCs across the state, there's more and more increasing every day. So we're definitely going to try to help each other out.
Yeah, so thanks for having us this time.
Thank you. I learned something new. I knew I would.
Bye, everyone.
Sorry.
I'm a little delayed, okay?
I'm sorry.
You're good.
I can't say anything else until I see this running.